Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake. In the bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown.
Welcome to the sound of one man clapping. I am the one man coming to you direct from the bunker, which has been fortified against the summer onslaught of the Australian cicadas. You can still hear them. You can always hear them. They're always there. It's not like they're whispering in your ear. It's the other day I was outside and I think they hit 90 decibels. We literally can't be outside and have a conversation. That said, life goes on. We're here, and this is a podcast about board gaming culture, and growing old gracelessly. Sharing with you today all the games that were, and there were a lot of games for a change, which is great. We're back, baby! We're going to talk about what's coming in with incoming! 4 exclamation marks. And we'll hit the crowdfunding vibes with Fomomofo, and then voices in my head before giving someone the clap. On with the show. Well, it's been 2 weeks, I think, since our last regular pod. Work is settling down, which is fantastic. I love what I do most days, but it's nice when it tapers off. I've got about 25 days off, so my gaming life's going to take front seat, well, back seat. Family's taking front seat. Christmas is coming, as you know. There's a lot going on, but gaming's going to take a back seat rather than a back seat. Gaming's ramping up, and since we last spoke, saddle up. Clappers, it's a big list. Also, I gotta say, I've been quite slack in citing games' origins, their designers, developers, artists, publishers. It's something I'm going to commit to being better at. I think credit where credit is due. And also, if you like the sounds of something I'm talking about, it helps you track them down. Because there could be 17 games called Imperium. Hey, I'm playing Imperium. Go look up Imperium on Board Game Geek. 4,200 entries. Not quite, but close. So kicking off, Super Trooper and I are back on the campaign trail with Aeon Trespass Odyssey. We actually got 2 Thursday nights in over the last couple of weeks. Aeon Trespass is our Thursday night junk food fest. Hardly junk food. It's high quality ingestion. We are getting deeper and deeper. I think we're probably up till about day 20 in in-game terms. Maybe not quite. And when there's only 80 days in the whole of the cycle, I do think we're sitting around that 20-day mark, and it's a tough one because I can't even tell you how far through the narrative we are. So, you know, if we're not a quarter of the way through the narrative, because if you get to day 80 and you haven't finished the campaign, you lose. Like, you just straight up lose. So, look, I'm not going to go and read any spoilers. I'm just going to hope for the best. We want to do as much as we can and unlock as much as we can. Without going into spoilers, for those of you that are waiting for your copy, you know, there's a thing called Inward Odyssey, which is a story related to your actual your city boat and whatnot that you want to unlock as much as possible, is my understanding. But it comes at a cost of advancing the main plot. So there's some danger in that. I'm really liking it. I think Super Troopers really liking it. We did in our second session last week get the full surprise, motherfucker, because we'd finished our timeline battle and this isn't a spoiler if you're waiting to play, but every sort of 5 to 6 days or 7 days, and it seems to be offset in a, not so much random, but not in a set timeline, but every so many in-game days, you come across one of the big beasties to battle, and it's your whole session, you know, it's 2 hours. It's a 2-hour, you know, battle that you don't have to win. You can lose the battle and still advance the game, but it will wipe out 4 of your Titans, and so then if you run out of Titans, you lose the game. So we'd managed this battle, and somehow in the battle, something had happened. We drew a card. Super Trooper, remember if he was sitting here. He's not here today. But something happened where basically the second that battle went out, I remember. As we were about to go into that battle, we drew a card, which meant we were basically going into a second battle the second that one was over, right? So we thought we were only going to have to do this battle, which is the timeline battle, which is when you have to do, and then maybe 5 or 6 days, in-game days of relief and exploration and building up your characters and crafting stuff and story and blah, blah, blah. And then we went into a second battle right after that. And so that second battle happened, and we survived, I think. It's all a bit of a blur. I mean, I think... Oh, no, we lost 2 Titans. We lost 2 Titans, and 2 Titans in auto-fail in that particular battle. Again, I'm not going to give you any of the details, but we lost 2 Titans, and we auto-failed that battle. And so we're licking our wounds, and we're going through some of the story, and we literally just were going through some of the adventure moments, and then the adventure moment went, lumbering over the hill, you see, at boop. I'm not going to give you the spoiler there. And so literally, we just finished 2 of these massive battles. And then the game went, yeah, don't get too comfy, mofos, because here comes another one. Now, don't get me wrong, I find the battles really engaging. It's not that I'm not into boss battlers, but the boss battle component, if it didn't have all this world building around it, I think I would find it too much rinse repeat. Like there's what's the one that's just come out this year? Primal the Awakening, I think, and that's kind of like Monster Hunter World. It's just battle after battle after battle after battle after battle, and that doesn't do it for me, you know. And if I want to play something like that, I'll play Hoplomachus Victorum, because it is arena battle after arena battle after arena battle, and that is the game. But an arena battle is not 2.5 hours, you know. It's 25 minutes, so you can chunk it down, or 40 minutes, And I think if it wasn't for the deep and immersed narrative around all of this, it would be a bit too much rinse repeat for me. And the narrative is really emergent. It's one of the things I'm really enjoying about ATO, Aeon Trespass, is the narrative is emergent. It's also quite subtle. You know, it's not like... Yes, there's a fair bit of narrative, there's a fair bit of reading, but it's not uninteresting. You know, the mythos and the legends of this world are unfolding, and it is interesting world building. So I for one, am very much enjoying it. I'm getting through the painting, which is also nice. There's a lot of painting that has to happen. I do have another model to try and paint before Super Trooper and I get back to the table. I've probably got about a week by my count or so. He's away for Christmas. I'm catering 4 different Christmas dinners next week, so I'm fairly busy. It is a massive model. So, yeah, I've got a bit of painting to do, but the painting is coming along nicely. And what's happening is we're getting more comfortable with the gameplay, because the gameplay in Aeon Trespass is not for the faint of heart. It's not a campaign you would jump into as your first campaign. It's the kind of thing that you'd want to have something like a Gloomhaven or an Oathsworn or a Tainted Grail under your belt first, and you need to have really liked those. It's not for everybody, but it is excellent. I'm really enjoying it. The way I've got it set up in the bunker now as well, I've got a couple of special card boxes and you know, the little toolboxes that hold nuts and bolts and such for all the tokens and shit. I've now got it so I can actually set up in about 10 minutes. It's about a 10-minute setup. It's about a 10 to 15-minute teardown, which is great. It doesn't even go back in the game box. I've got a spot on one of my shelves where it all just sits in there, and it's easy to set up and tear down. It's one of those things that a lot of the commentary leading into this, when I was obviously, you read a lot about these games before you start, you watch a lot of videos, and a lot of the reviews said, "Oh, you need a space to set it up. It's an absolute bear." If you can find a tidy way to pack it away that makes sense to you, it's literally 10 minutes. I roll the mat out, I put the models out, I open the toolbox with all the tokens in it. I open the card box that I've got with all the cards in it. I put out 10 different stacks of cards, and I'm ready to go. That's it on the tiles, the map tiles. But because I picked them up in an order and I put them out in the same order, you know, granted we only have 16 or 18 tiles out, but you don't have to have every tile out. You only need the tiles, the map tiles that are in your area. It's kind of like 7th Citadel. You know, you've got this emergent map that comes out on these tiles or cards. It's not that much to set up. It really isn't. And so I'm finding it surprisingly easy to put on the table and put away. And we only have 394 or so hours to go, which is great. And that is by Into the Unknown Studios and an army of artists and developers. I know there's one main writer, Marcin is the main world-building writer for that, but there's an army behind this game. For those of you that are still waiting, worldwide, it is worth waiting for. This game, once it gets to your table, it's I've said this before. Aeon Trespass, I don't even think it's a board game anymore. This is an experience. It's not even like Gloomhaven's still a board game because it still has a board gamey feel. Yes, you're throwing dice in Aeon Trespass. The dice feel tense. The dice hurt my brain, and not in a way of like, there's lots of little mitigation, you've got tokens and things to mitigate. Anyway, it's not really a board game to me at this point. It's more of an experience. And so, as I said, for those of you that are waiting, it's worth the wait. For those of you that aren't interested, I'm sorry I took 12 minutes of your time. We'll move on. Aeon Trespass. Aeon Trespass. We'll be talking about it a lot over the next 27 years. I've had, over the last 2 weeks, a whole lot of the Exit Advent Calendar. It's the mystery of the missing Hollywood star or something this year. It's been fantastic. The Peanut and I are cranking through that. As of recording right now, it's the 22nd of December. So we have 3 days left on that to finish. It's become one of my favorite, most charming Christmas traditions. We start that on December 1st and we do it every day. And if we miss a day, we just do 2 in 1. It only takes about 6 to 10 minutes a box. Some of the puzzles this year have been really amazing and clever and intuitive, but also rewarding. Some have been quite trivial. There's some we've opened a box up and the Peanut's gone, well, there's the answer. I saw that earlier. And it's done in 90 seconds. There have been a couple that have been downright annoying. These are the Bob eats apples and Sarah has a scorpion. Which one has blue as their favorite color? And we just kind of go, yeah, no, we're not. Just, Anyway, I love this tradition. I love the exit games. I love the Exit Advent Calendar. We'll be doing it every year, and it's fantastic. I got in a game of Voidfall, which I'm not unfond of a game of Voidfall. Voidfall is a game that I quite enjoy, and that was with Dusty and Super Trooper. It was a big, sprawling map. It was a map of maximum conflict, I think, 3 out of 4 conflict and 3 out of 4 complexity, which I think is as high as it goes. I don't think it goes to 4 out of 4 for both. And not so much because we were in each other's faces on this particular map, but because there was Voidborn everywhere. It was a very heavily populated map, and the cycle cards that came out added more angst on the board. I really enjoyed this game of Voidfall. It took a long time. It was probably about a 4-hour game of Voidfall. And that's in part because if you haven't played Voidfall, I'm going to take another 5 minutes of your life, maybe 3. Voidfall is entirely deterministic. There's no dice. There's no flipping of cards. There's no crit fails. There's no crit successes. If you're going to invade somewhere, you know what happens before you go in to that sector. You know how it's going to play out because you can see who has torpedoes, who has shields, who has hyperdrive, who's there, who's not there, how far it is to get there if somebody wants to send more support. And you can actually math it all out. And that's where it takes a little bit of time because you really want to, if you go into a battle in Voidfall and you haven't grokked the situation, and I played a game with Super Trooper, we played a 2-player game earlier in the year where I was going into a battle and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yep." And he said again, he said, "You're sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And I went in and I'd totally forgotten that he had, I think it was long-range missiles, which let him blow my ass out of the sky from 2 sectors away. It was one of those. And, a lesser man would have gone, oh, look, I'll just take that back. And I'm happy to take my lumps, man, if I've made a mistake or if I've misread. There's no take-backs on that. And so pretty much I went in with what I thought was this army that was going to completely take control of the sector. And Super Trooper went, "Yeah, I just want to say I did warn you twice." And I went, "Yep, you've been perfectly fair." And it was all gone. It was all gone. So last week played Voidfall, loved it. I always love Voidfall. I've never played a game of Voidfall that I haven't enjoyed. And it remains my number one game. That's by David Turksey and Nigel Buckle and published by Mind Clash. I have the Uber Deluxe version with the everything fancy. I've got the metal. They're not even resources. They're guilds and installations. And they're chunky and beautiful and heavy in your hand. And they make a nice clinking noise. And that's Voidfall. We played a game of, also, the same 3 of us. This was after Voidfall. We played Dune Imperium, which we had not played in a very long time. When I say very long time, probably 10 months or so since we played Dune Imperium. And we played that with the Rise of Ix and Immortality expansions, which I think I just wouldn't play without those two expansions. If you haven't played Dune Imperium, there's also Dune Imperium Uprisings, which has just come out, which is kind of like Dune Imperium 2.0. And there's a new expansion that's just been released called Bloodlines, which has more factions and a little bit more. And I think if the factions are good and there's enough factions, I might pick it up just for the factions. Not because I'm bored with the factions we played, but we've played a lot of Dune Imperium because we really like it. I know that it can be a little bit polarizing in the market. There's some people that love it. There's some people that are a bit meh. And there's some people that really don't like it. We're in the camp that really enjoys Dune Imperium. Partly in part for me because I've been a mad Dune fan since about 1985. I've loved the Dune universe, the Dune world building, and the Dune IP. This doesn't necessarily play out the Dune IP like some of the big war games do, for example. But it's just enough. It's just enough paint that I feel Dune-y, and the art that's gone into it is actually the art from the movie, the Villeneuve movie, the first movie. Interestingly, Dune Imperium was meant to be released after the movie. It was meant to be released after the movie, but because the movie was so delayed due to script writing strikes, they ended up having to release it before the movie. But it didn't hurt it at all. It was meant to come out after the movie and play on the groundswell of support from the movie. It turned out it didn't need it. It's got a great following. It's done very well. And Dune Imperium. So I guess I won't spend too much time on it because I know, like Wingspan, Dune Imperium's everywhere. A lot of people have played it. But it's got a little bit of a deck building component. You tend not to get too many cards by the end of the game. It's not quite like Quest for El Dorado, where you have churned and burned a lot of cards in your hand. But it's, you are adding cards in and you are trying to get the crappy cards out because your starting hand of 10 does have some cards in it that get you started. But to be honest, they're pretty shit by the second or third round of the game. And so you really are trying to mill your deck. You're trying to burn out and trash out those cards and get some better cards in there. It's a worker placement game, and it's a really angsty screw you worker placement game because just about, with the exception of there's some spots in the middle of the board which are, ostensibly and thematically around the spice fields. They have spice on them and they give you a little bit of extra stuff. The rest of the spaces are singular and unique, and you need them at some point in the game. And you're basically going to be playing a card in your hand to get your person out to that space. It's got to match the symbols. And if some dickhead at the table takes the space you want, not only can you not take it, but the chance of you even having the card in your hand to get there next turn is only about sort of 1 in 3. And so it's got this really meaty push-pull. It's not so much a take that, but there's a whole lot of cock blocking that goes on, and I love it. I think it's the number of times where you get screw you around the table with Dune Imperium is fantastic. The Rise of Ix and the Immortality expansions add just enough without watering down the gameplay, because while one of the expansions added another worker placement space, 2 more worker placement spaces, they didn't compete with spaces that existed. So there are 2 new worker placement spaces, but even in a 2-player game, that's just 2 more spaces. And in a 2-player game also, you play with a blocking third to dummy player. So I think it's great. I think it's superb. I love Dune Imperium. Dusty thoroughly rinsed us in like the very last moments, and that's always how the game washes out. I think what's fantastic about Dune is it's basically a 10-point game, and the last 3 points are usually claimed in like the last single turn. And so you're racing up to 7 and 8 and 9, and then that last turn, the score is usually something like 12-10 or 12-11, because as soon as somebody cracks 10 points, the game is over. Dune Imperium is fantastic. I love it. It's designed by Paul Denon and an army of artists. I know I said I was going to get better at reading out names, but I think there's about 7 artists that worked on Dune Imperium, published by Direwolf Games. And Dune Imperium remains one of my favorites. It will probably stay on my shelf forever. Also got to play, and this is the first time for me, a game of Canvas. Now, Canvas, has this really clever mechanic where you've got these clear sleeves. Oh, go cicadas. Can you hear those mofos in the background? You've got these clear sleeves, and the sleeves have some patterns on them. No, they don't. The sleeves have the starting of a painting on them. And what you need to do is you need to slot 3 cards, which are also transparent, into the sleeve to build a picture. And you're trying to match up the icons, which are the bottom of each of those cards, which can be triangles or squares or circles or whatever they are, palettes, with a number of in-game goals that are randomized at the start. So the in-game goals might say you need 3 squares. And so at the bottom of that painting, you have to slot in 3 different clear cards that together will give you the 3 squares. And they're spaced out. There's 5 or 6 icons along the bottom in columns. I think it's 5. And so there's 5 different icons along the bottom, and they can be just about anything. There's a market of cards, a la Century Spice Road, where you can buy the cards, and the further along they are on the market, the more expensive they are. And you pull these cards in, and as soon as you have 5 cards, you have to paint a painting. Your patron's sitting there tapping his watch, going, "Hey, dude, where's my painting? I've been paying you." So as soon as you have 5 cards, you have to slot 3 of them in, hell or high water, and make some kind of painting. And the part that burns your brain a little bit is you can achieve 2 or more or as many as you can of these goals, depending on how they are. So when we were playing, for example, we had one of the goals was you had to have 3 squares. One of the goals was you had to have 2 pairs. So you could have 3 squares and 2 triangles, and that would also qualify as 2 pairs because you had a pair of squares and a pair of triangles. So you score both of those. You could also, and it's a little tougher, but if you got the lucky draw, you could put 4 squares in. So you get 3 squares, you score that card, and you got 4 squares, which is also 2 pairs of squares. I really enjoyed Canvas. I thought it was really sweet. It was easy on the eyes. It was super easy to teach and pick up. It's only about a 25-minute game. You have a painting at the end that's got a name on it. You present it, and you talk about the painting, and you score the painting. And Canvas was easy breezy, and I think that the Fox would really like Canvas. I think the Peanut would really like Canvas. And I enjoyed it immensely. The other day, got in a game of Caesar Sees Rome in 20 minutes. This is one that I think Super Trooper got for his birthday, so it hadn't even been punched yet. We had our Christmas celebration on the weekend, and so he brought that with him, and we were, waiting on a couple of things in between other games and other people arriving, and so we popped that out and punched it. We did the teach. Spoiler alert, I did not seize Rome in 20 minutes. Super Trooper fairly trounced me at this. This is, I don't know how to, this is, I would say at best, the best way to describe Caesar is you're drawing tokens out of a bag, and those tokens have values on them, and you've got to put these tokens down such that the values line up into different areas. And so I think the best label I could put on it is its area majority. It's not so much area control. I guess it's an area control game. It's area majority. So you put these tokens down, and it might have a 2 on one side and a 4 on the other. It's a round token, and you line it up so that the 2 goes into one province, the 4 goes into the other. And then once the province has all the borders claimed, whoever has the highest number inside gets to claim that province. There's tokens that go around. There's bonuses and combos off the tokens. It probably took me too many turns to sort of grok the mechanic for it. And by the time I sort of understood what was going on, Super Trooper owned the board. But again, it really is just a 20-minute game. I think it would be a really fun one to sit down and play 2 or 3 or 4 times in rapid succession, swapping back and forth as you go. The 2 sides don't play overly differently, really. As far as I can tell, the pieces on both sides are absolutely identical. There's no difference in them. They're just a different color, and one of them goes first. So it's kind of like in chess. You get an opportunity to go first every second game. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was by Paolo Mori, art by Marius Ganzel and Paul Sizer, and I wasn't clever enough to make a note of the publisher. I think that's because I think it said it published by 14 different publishers globally, and I don't know which ones published Super Troopers, so I didn't make a note. We followed that up. Again, I had a great couple of weeks, guys, with one of my favorite games that I think is a bit of a sleeper because it sits on the shelf and you almost forget about it for ages and ages. And then you put it on the table and you play and you go, yeah, I remember why I love this game. And that's Revive. I really, really like Revive. I think Revive is very clever. I think it has a bundle of mechanisms that are tied together in a way that is deeply satisfying. And so in Revive, and look, I'm going to give this the Euro underlay here. The theme is really like loose. Like you're coming out of an underground cavern and you're exploring out and you're expanding. And you're expanding and exploring. It's almost 4XE, I suppose. There's no extermination going on. But really, you've got population, you've got buildings, and you've got these tiles that are face down that are really awkward shaped to pick up and flip over. It's kind of like each one is shaped like a butterfly almost. And so you come out on the map, you're going to explore the map, and if you explore, you get points and whatnot. And if you build, you get resources and huzzah bonuses. And there's a great action programming mechanic where you've got cards in your hand, which are all open information. They're down on the table. You've got cards that you've played, and you've got cards in your discard. And so each cycle, which represents a generation where your people are basically going back into hibernation, and the next ones that are in hibernation are coming out to work. That's your cards coming out of your discard into your tableau. The cards that you play go into your discard, and you won't get them back for another round. So if you know there's an action you want to take in each round, you have to meaningfully kind of split up the cards you're playing so that in each round that you play, because you're going to have basically two sets of cards and never the twain shall meet. I mean, there are ways to cycle them a little faster, but it is very tricky. And that card programming, I really like. It reminds me a lot of Sky Mines, in that in Sky Mines, I don't want to talk about Sky Mines for ages, but I also love Sky Mines for the same reason, is that you're programming a number of cards for your turn, and then at the end of your turn, they have to go into different discards. So if you program 3 cards, they have to go into 3 different discards, and every turn you pick up one of your discards. And so how you've discarded your cards is going to dictate what cards you're going to have in each round. And it's a mechanic I really like, that action programming where you've got a delay on getting your cards back. I find that really satisfying. I find it meaty and crunchy without being too brain-burny and satisfying. I think Revive's excellent. It's got a lot going on. I do have the expansion, which is I want to call it Rise of the Unfolders, but that's not it. That's that's Tidal Blades or something. It's the Lords of the Deep, or it's not Marine Worlds, that's Ark Nova. It's watery, it has big sentient jellyfish in it. I haven't played with it yet, and because we had not played Revive in a long time, I didn't put it on the table, but I think what I'll do is I'll get Revive on the table in the next sort of 8 to 10 weeks again when it's fresher in everyone's mind, and we'll put the expansion out, because the expansion is highly rated, and it doesn't, again, dilute the gameplay. It just gives you more things to choose from. I tied for second, which means I tied for loser, which is fine because ties don't count for anything. But as you've heard me say before, I like to win, but I love to play. And this is by Helga Meissner, Christian Amundsen, and Elif Svensson and Anna Vermland. That's obviously from somewhere Scandinavian. I don't know where it's from. Art is by a whole lot of experts on art. Like there's like 9 artists or something in this game. And the art is awesome. The art on the cards is great. The art on the board is great. I don't know why we've got these crashed alien skulls. There doesn't seem to be any sort of lore around that. We were calling them Indiana Jones crystal skulls. But it's great. Revive is fantastic, and it's published by Aporta Games. We went from Revive to Maracaibo. We went from post-apocalyptic reemergence into the land to Pirates of the Caribbean without the Caribbean. Well, I guess it's the Caribbean. Maracaibo we've been playing for a while. I want to say a year and a half, because we've been playing the Maracaibo campaign. So Maracaibo is an Alex Pfister game. Alexander Pfister of Great Western Trail Argentina, Great Western Trail New Zealand, Great Western Trail Central Prussia, Great Western Trail Greenland, Great Western Trail Northern Canada. I mean, you know, I'm being funny, obviously, because they're all different. I haven't played them, but apparently they're different. But this is an Alexander Pfister game, and we haven't played Maracaibo, I want to say, in well over a year. So it was a little bit of a reteach. Maracaibo's it's a meaty game. It's a chunky game with a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. And the thing that I will say I struggle with Maracaibo, it's not really a struggle, but I do struggle with, is that the scoring is, other than there's scoring on the cards that you play, but the scoring for the end of the game is fairly occluded in that you have to be up these 3 tracks to win. You can't really win unless you're pumping up these 3 tracks. And you know how to get up those tracks, but you're kind of at the behest of a random tile draw, because you get up those tracks through combat, usually fighting for Spain or England or France, because you're a pirate. You can jump ship and fight for anyone you want. You don't have to fight for England twice in a row. But it's in your interest to specialize as much as possible to get as far up those tracks as you can. However, combat it's not really combat. You're making a couple of decisions about how to manipulate the board space based on the flip of a tile. And that tile will give you, 3 different options. And those options will be weighted into one side. And if it's not the side you need, well, then you're going to end up picking that side anyway. So I find it a little swingy, if I'm being honest. There's some games I've played Maracaibo and I've had like 265 points. And I've played a game of Maracaibo, I think, and I got 78 points. But I do enjoy it. I like the game. I like the way it plays. Like Great Western Trail, there's a built-in timer in that you're basically going around the board 4 times. And you can choose to move between 1 and 7 spaces on the board. So the faster you go around that board, whoever gets to the end, they're going to end the round. So it's not asynchronous in that if Super Trooper is going around the board 4 times at his own pace, I'm going around the board 4 times at my own pace. No. The first guy that goes around the board 4 times is going to end the game, basically. So whoever gets to the end of the first round, it ends for everybody. So whether your ship's up that end or not, your round is basically over. And there's a little bit of leeway. You've got another timing bit in there. But if you really want to hustle the game through, it's a meaningful tactic to race the end of the game a little bit to help prevent other people from getting points. The economy is really interesting. The economy goes up and down. There's a bit of I call it master builder nonsense in our game group, in that sometimes it's the race to see who can put the most master builders in their tableau, because a master builder gives you a discount for playing every other card, including another master builder card. So if you've got 7 master builders out, then you're basically playing cards for free. And often the way we play, or the way it seems to spill out on the table, is whoever has the most master builders gets the most points. Not always. But anyway, I enjoy it. I like anything pirates. I've been waiting patiently for Pax Hispanica for 2 years since I pre-ordered. Thank you, Ion Games. Any day now would be fantastic, because that looks great. And this is, of course, by Alexander Pfister, art by Aileen Kierman and Fiore, and published by Capstone Games. And I said it was a good couple of weeks for games. Clappers, here at OMC. We moved into, after that, another game that I have only played once before. And I remember imminently enjoying it. And I also remember losing very badly the first time I played. And my second experience was no different. I absolutely enjoyed playing Rajas of the Ganges. Rajas of the Ganges. I always call it Ranja Ganja in my head. And I know that's not the game, but it seems like the name of a game you'd play on April 20th. Rajas of the Ganges. Played that last weekend. Again, scored terribly. Didn't really get anything sort of up and working in the way of any sort of engine until about sort of 60% of the way through the game. But I really like the gameplay. It's got a little bit of a Scholars of the South Tigris thing going on, because you've got, I think it's 4 different colors of dice that you're working with. They're this really beautiful translucent dice. They look like little carved gemstones, and they're great. But unlike Scholars, where they're your actual workers and they're weighted based on their pips, the dice are currency. So you've got workers that are going, this is basically a worker placement game. You've got workers that are going out, but you've got to pay for their actions with the dice. And you've got to pay for their actions sometimes with the color. So if you're building into your tableau, you've got a little mat that you're building into. It's kind of like 4 or 5 little mini games that all pull together. Rajas of the Ganges. And for example, the tile you want to build might need 12 green. Well, you need dice that total 12. And that might be 2 dice. If you can get them to 6, that might be 4 dice. And dice are also really, really tight. It's you really have to work to mill dice in this game to get them into your currency, into your tableau. The art is gorgeous. It looks great. The gameplay is really fun. It doesn't overstay its welcome. With 3 of us, I think Rajas was about a 2-hour game. And what I really like is, although it is like mini game the game, they all interlock really nicely. You know, you've got the ships going down the canal, and they give you special bonuses. You've got the temples that play in with your tableau. Every time you build a temple, you get points based on where you are on the temple tracks. There's worker placement to basically farm dice. There's worker placement to build buildings. There's worker placement to run your markets. And you can't run everything. You can't have everything. You can't build out and have markets and have temples. And you have to specialize. It's like a lot of these games. You have to specialize in order to win. I didn't specialize. I had the shotgun approach. I had a blast, though. I absolutely had a blast. I just wish somebody would email me and tell me what the little RSL ashtray tokens are meant to be, because that's all I think of when I see them. They're like a little crinkled. They look like a little crinkled tin tray that you would have seen at a barbecue when you were 8 years old at one of your auntie's house, and or at a entry level club somewhere where, you know, they throw them out every 2-3 days. I don't know what they are. They have little bonuses on the back of them. Somebody send me a message. Let me know what they're meant to be, please. Rajas of the Ganges, great game. It is actually designed by Inca Brand and Marcus Brand, whose names you would like. Inca Brand and Marcus Brand. Who are they? They actually are the team, the design team behind the Exit series. So I have played a lot of their games. They designed the Exit series. They designed the Advent calendars that we play. Thank you, Inca and Marcus. Love your work. And art by Dennis Lohausen. And Dennis is actually a big name in the art world for board games. He's done a lot of games like Arc Nova and Gaia Project. So there's a lot behind this game, Rajas of the Ganges, which I don't think it's something that is as widely known and played, but it is a lot of fun. And I really enjoy it, and I think it's got something different to present on the table. There are a few other great games I won't go into because we've spoken about them at length, and they're kind of sort of filler. We played a bit of Compile, played some Landmarks. And with that, I've actually managed to clock over my 365 plays for 2024. Huzzah! That was one of my game goals that I was really, really keen on at the start of the year. It's not a game a day, literally, because there's some days I can't play games, but in 224, I've played more than 365 games. Looks like I'm going to miss my 10 by 10, and for those of you that don't do 10 by 10s, that's playing 10 games 10 times each, unless I can somehow clock up 2 more plays of Scholars of the South Tigris before the end of the year. If I can do that, I can make it. If not, I'll live. And my Shelf of Firsts, which was on my list of possible achievements for the year to clean out my Shelf of Firsts, it's still winking at me seductively over there. But a game a day, I'm happy with that. It's the one I was most hopeful for. And that'll do it for the games that were.
Boxes on the doorstep, new delights inside. Heaven's on fire, fields to divide.
And this week for incoming, 4 exclamation marks, it's a quiet one. Christmas is literally 3 days away. Postman Pete is running his ass off. He is able to provide gold-lined stockings for his children and champagne for Mrs. Postman, because all the packages, literally all the packages are going. You watch those delivery vans this week and it is bonkers. But there are no more games coming for the rest of the year. I'm expecting quite a bit through January, February, March, which is very exciting, but there's no more incoming. Not even sad. I've got so much good stuff to play. I've got so much time to play it. It looks like Santa wasn't able to rustle up Betrayal of the Second Era in time for me to enjoy it for my 3 weeks off, because it's looking like that's going to arrive around January 15th, which is just in time for me to go back to work. So no tears, because I live the good life. But that's incoming. Looks like it's done for the year. Well, here we are. Fomomofo in December. It's December 22nd, recording today, and I have no FOMO. All the crowdfunding is done that I can make sense of anyway. Christmas is here. I spent this morning getting the turkey ready for next week. I'm doing my grandmother's recipe, as in her production. My grandmother's turkey was drier than pick your metaphor. But the way she did it was delicious. She obviously did a bread stuffing in one cavity, but in the neck stuffing, she did Italian sausage. And I don't know why. My grandmother was, first generation Canadian from sturdy peasant Scottish stock. And I know they eat a lot of pork and whatnot up there. But she used to pack the neck cavity with sausage. So I was with one of my good mates this morning. We're getting all our Christmas yum-yums done. So I dressed 2 turkeys. I made the stuffing with a brioche stuffing for the bread cavity. And he, being also a chef, had made a handmade pork and fennel sausage. And so we packed that neck cavity with the pork sausage. They've been trussed and dressed and ready to go. I'll be wrapping the breast with bacon. And that is all ready to go. We'll be eating that on Christmas Eve. Later in the week, for those of you that love food, we'll do a little food talk since there's no Fomomofo. I did 2 porchettas. So they're whole pork bellies. Stripped off the skin off 1/3 of it along one side and rubbed the inside with sage and black garlic. And they've been rolled up and trussed and ready to go. So they're going to be roasted. I'm doing a candied apple and rosemary jam to go with my porchetta. So that will be next week on Friday. So that's how I spent my morning. No Fomomofo. However, I will say that the expansions for the South Tigris series from my favorite law firm, Phillips and Hill, has been announced for late January, and so there's an expansion for each one of the South Tigris games and the Moon Saga campaign, which will link all 3 games in one giant campaign. You can play them all 3 back to back. That will do it for Fomomofo for 2024.
Voices in my head, I'm talking to myself. What board game should I get down off the shelf?
This week for Voices in My Head, I want to talk about tabletop dividends. Now, that sounds like fancy dickhead speak, but what I really want to touch on is what we call the value proposition. And it's not so much affordability, it's more about the perceived value of board games, because it's something I talk about a lot. It's about whether I think something's worth it, particularly crowdfunding. Is it worth it? Is it worth it at that price? Is it, and I just want to share a story, because I was having a chat with one of my friends the other day, and he'll be listening. And we're talking about games and expensive games and big games and small games and games in between. And I was talking about, it was probably enormity or something, and he said, I would never be able to afford that. And I looked at him and I said, of course you can. And that comment has been kind of circling around my head, my comment, not his, for about the last 10 days. And I'll tell you why. Because I look back on it and I think the way that comment came out was probably quite dismissive and douchey, and it's not how it was meant. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to bookend this by saying the same thing twice. I'm really lucky, clappers, right? I am in a space in my life, I'm 50 years old, where I have a very reasonable amount of disposable income. I'm very lucky. Okay, so let me start and finish with that sort of statement. But buying, and so let's look at it this way. And this is what I mean by that statement, is that, we're talking probably about enormity, which I think I spent, I won't say I spent too much on. I spent what I wanted to spend on it, and it was a lot. And I'm going to get a lot of game out of it. We're going to talk about that later. But when I say, of course you can afford it, at our level at life, we're not struggling in my friend group, okay? So if you are struggling at Christmas, guys, please know that none of this is, and I'm not trying to get too soft or whatnot. I don't want to beat around the bush, but I know that there are a lot of people that are doing it tough. And if you are doing it tough, if you're suffering mortgage stress, or you've lost your job, or somebody's in hospital, please note that none of this is to diminish what you're going through. Okay, I'm talking about my life and board games and the way I look at things and my vantage point, my perspective. And it's not meant to come across as douchey, like I think my comment probably did the other day when I went, of course you can afford it. What I meant by that comment is this. When you look at how much you spend in a year on board games, whatever that number is, if it's $100 or if it's $500 or if it's $1,000 a year, whatever it is, and there's no judgment on this. Like, there's some people that spend a lot more than that. I probably spend more than that on board games in a year. It's about the value proposition So if you spend, and I'm just going to play with the number of, let's say $500, because it's a nice round number. Let's say you spend $500 a year on board games. You can get 10 board games. You can get 10 board games if you're looking for games that are on sale, games that are mid-tier price. Particularly if you're overseas in North America, like the U.S., where you can get something like Ark Nova for $40. I think I paid $110 for Ark Nova. I'm in Australia, guys. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just talking about the local economy. Whatever the number is, you say, well, my budget a year is $500. It's about the return on that $500. This is what I'm talking about. Tabletop dividends. How that $500 pays back to you. So my comment, which, as I said, it's been rattling around in my head because I think it just popped out of my mouth, and I think it probably sounded really douchey. But what I mean by this is, if whatever your number is, $500 a year, you want a $1,000 board game, well, that's just, you don't buy one this year. You put that money away and you buy it next year. If your budget's $100, well, then you save up. If that board game is your holy grail game, if Kingdom Death Monster is your holy grail game, if you want everything Kingdom Death Monster, it's like $3,000 or something. Now, if you can't afford groceries, like I'm not talking about people that I'm talking about people in our hobby who have a budget for it, guys. Again, it's Christmas time. I'm not trying to talk about first world problems. I'm just trying to unpick my own value propositions, in this hobby. So if you want a $500 board game, the question really is, how much value does that board game have for me? And that question of affordability, I think, is actually not the right question that we as board gamers and hobbyists and collectors, and I know we're a niche, so I am talking about this niche, guys. What we're looking at is the value proposition. What am I getting for that $500? So am I getting 10 games that I can play with the table? Am I getting Paku Paku and Compile and Micro Macro and Cicada and Kites and Nar and Harmonies and Cascadia and Nidavellir and Fort and that's probably only $350 in games. And that is 10 games that I know I'm going to enjoy, put them on the table, play it with the Peanut, play it with the Fox, play it with Super Trooper, whoever comes over. They're fun. That's great. Or am I going to go and get Voidfall and, say, Tainted Grail, which together were probably, I think Voidfall was $150 because it was Kickstarter. It was the most amazing price. And I think Tainted Grail was about $350. So let's say that's about the same price. So I'm going to get Voidfall and Tainted Grail, which are maybe not going to get to the table at a volume point of view as the other 10 games I listed, but are they going to give me the value I want? And this is the interesting question, which is, when you talk about, is a game affordable? Can I afford a game? For me, what I'm thinking about is, do I want to spend that on that game? And what I found is really interesting about my own spending habits and my own metrics for this is it really is a bit of a pendulum sometimes. I'll look at games and, for example, let's take Avalon the Riven Vale, which I just funded. Avalon the Riven Vale is a game that I can honestly look at and say, if I get that played once a year, I'm going to be doing really well. And to be honest, to play it once a year, I think, look, it might come to the table and the group goes, oh my God, this is amazing. It's now in top rotation. That's great. I think it's probably one of those games that's a bit of a statement game. It's a game I'm going to be taking to things like PlayCon or PAX or game days and getting a lot of value out of, because I'm going to enjoy the presence on the table. I'm going to enjoy the way it looks. I'm going to enjoy the tactility of it. I'm going to enjoy pushing the toys around. I'm going to enjoy the presence and the wow factor. And it's going to get played in 10 years. It's going to get played 15 times, maybe. Okay, and then I look at Lands of Evershade, which I also went in on quite aggressively, not for all the plastic and all the minis, but all the gameplay stuff. Now, Lands of Evershade, I can tell you unequivocally, is going to get played for well over 100 hours in my bunker, because it's a 15-hour campaign, and by the time it fills, The Peanut is a mad D&D fan. She loves D&D. She doesn't get to play it very often because we rely on Lou to run one-shot campaigns for us, and she's only played it once or twice. But she has absolutely loved it. And I think the character building and the world building and the fact that not everything has to be dealt with a sword in Lands of Evershade means that I think it was probably, again, $350. They were both about $350 from memory. It's going to present... it's going to present 100 hours of gaming in say 2 or 3 years. And so why would I buy both of those? Why am I applying, a certain polish to one and a different glow to the other one? And that's because my value proposition is based on my level of enjoyment, and that's a movable feast. And so I look at for example, Avalon, the Riven Vale, and I think, well, it's not a dollars per hour for me. It's like going out for a fancy meal. I'm getting fed, and it's a bit of a luxury experience versus cooking a pot of chili at home, which I also love. A good Tex-Mex chili full of pork belly and beef short rib and lots of green peppers and onions and some fresh chilies and spices. I can make a pot of chili. I can make a pot of chili that feed 20 people for about $35, and it is fantastic. I will enjoy that just as much as going out and spending, $200 on dinner with the Fox. I enjoy them both. I enjoy them both immensely, and I can afford to do both. But if I want to go out with the Fox and we want to go spend $200, $250 on a dinner out, that comes at an opportunity cost. And so when I threw the comment out going, well, of course you can afford it. This is, I guess, what I was talking about is the opportunity cost and the value proposition. And because as gamers, our value proposition is sometimes absolutely just thrown out the window when something pretty comes along. That's the other thing, and I'm the first to admit it. When something pretty comes along and I go, whoa, I just look at it. Just look at it. It looks amazing. I want to touch it. And I don't really buy games on that metric, but it does suck you in very early on, and that's the Fomomofo. It hits you right in that lizard brain where it says, look at the pretty stuff. For example, Revenant, another game that recently funded, another game that I went in on. I think getting Revenant at the level without the minis was a great option. I almost did it. I almost just went, yeah, I could do that. And the reason I didn't is because and what's great about Revenant and the way it's shipping is that, unlike Voidfall, you either bought the regular version or you bought the Galactic box with all the bells and whistles. Revenant's shipping such that the upgrades, the upgrade pieces, they're actually clicking into the cardboard tokens. So if I don't want to set up the cardboard, the big pieces, if I want something that's a little more sedate, austere, or a little less table presence, which I probably won't, but if I do, I can do that. But if it comes to, it's like, well, no, I really want this. This is something I want to sit and I want to feel like I'm pushing Battlestar Galactica around the table, then I can do that as well. And it costs more. It costs quite a bit more. And for me, with something like Revenant, that value proposition is in the choice of how I want to put it on the table. How do I want to present this? How do I want to get it out? Do I want to have the extra 50 minutes of setup, or do I want to get on the table a little faster? And all of this psychobabble is just for me to say that affordability, I think, is the wrong metric for me, because realistically, I could afford to buy just about any game I wanted. And that's not me bragging, guys. Please, I'm not bragging. I'm just this is an absolute stream of consciousness dump today. But it's about, what can I then not buy? What can I then not get? What's coming out next year? If I go and drop, $500 on a crowdfunding campaign that I'm not going to see for 2 years, what does that cost me in the interim? It doesn't cost me any extra money, but what it means is there's something I'm not going to be able to do. And again, I'm going to bookend this. We're coming close to the end on this, guys. This is not about having. This is not acquisitionism. This is a hobby I love. I'm a collector, and you'll have to forgive my hubris in talking about it at length. But making that choice comes at another choice, comes at a cost of what can I not do? What does that take away? And it's never going to take away things like essentials in this house. It's not going to take away my ability to pay the mortgage. It's not going to take away my ability to feed myself and my children, or put gas in the car. It's not going to do that. It's going to take away another experience. And so for me, when I'm looking at these big campaigns or these games that are incessant, I mean, the schedule of the last 12 weeks was so aggressive. And we talked about this last regular episode, I think, is so aggressive. But the way they get you is, it's now, or it's like 3 years or 4 years, and something like Enormity, which, again, I don't want to talk too much about Enormity because I've bored you with Enormity for 2 or 3 episodes. Enormity's not going to go to retail. It's like Aeon Trespass and Kingdom Death. These things don't go to retail. There's no retail shop in the world that's going to say, yeah, send me a $1,000 game, or even a $500 game, so I can sit it on the shelf and let it gather dust and maybe get a dent in it while it sits there, waiting for somebody to walk in the door who's going to drop that kind of money. And so it's the kind of investment that I'm happy to make because the value proposition to me is sound. It's not that it's so expensive, because it's either it's the big pot of chili because I'm going to play 100 hours, or it's the fancy meal with my wife. And that's kind of where this pendulum swings for me in my value proposition and what I get off the table. If I put something on the table and I get the fancy meal, I'm happy with that. And if I put something on the table and it's the pot of chili, I'm happy with that. One of the things I always say about the Fox is the wife of a chef, and she hasn't had to cook in well over a decade. And believe me, she has other talents. She's the most amazing woman I've ever met. But one of the things I always brag about my beautiful wife is I could make her beef Wellington and Béarnaise, or I could make her a chili dog, and she would be equally grateful, equally delighted, and equally happy with the experience both ways. And I guess that's what I'm coming to in this, is that, guys, whatever tabletop dividends, however your games pay back to you, is wonderful. And congrats, and I could not be happier for you. And if I happen to make a comment on this podcast that you think, what a dick, please know that it's not meant that way. It's absolutely not, that I'm sometimes stuck in my own head. I don't have a co-host, except for, Super Trooper spent a couple of days at the table, which is fantastic. And you're going to be hearing more of him because, as I said on the last bonus episode, he's quickly becoming the creative director of bonus episodes for OMC. But there's no one here to keep me honest and say, hey man, that's not cool. Nothing I ever say is in malice. Nothing I ever say is in disrespect. And I want to, again, it's Christmas, so I want to bookend this and say respect to families that are doing it tough for whatever reason, guys. If you've got mortgage stress, Christmas is expensive. If you've got work challenges, this commentary drivel is not meant to trivialize genuine financial distress. I am infinitely lucky in my life, and I know it. I'm self-aware. So thank you to you clappers. It's coming up on Christmas. It's not like there's hundreds of you out there, so those of you that are listening from whatever corner of the world, I appreciate you. I am humbled to log in occasionally and see people listening from all over the world in our austere numbers. And until next time, this week the clap goes out to the guy that keeps everything running this time of year. The clap goes out to the one that's making sure that there's magic in every home. This clap goes out to you, Santa. I know you're out there. I know you're listening. You're working double time every day of the week to make sure there's magic in every house. And we know it. Santa, here's to you. And that concludes this week's festive audio mixology. I hope you enjoyed this cocktail. You can reach us on all the socials. You can find us on Facebook by searching One Man Clapping. You can email me directly at onemanclapping with a W, W-O-N, manclapping@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram on #manclapping, and you can join the One Man Clapping Guild on BGG. Subscribe to Guild 4426, and that will have something in it one day. There's actually some very exciting content coming over the next 3 or 4 weeks, so stay tuned, keep listening, and thank you as always for your time. This week's episode has been brought to you by Carbs, all the carbs. If I could make a bread lasagna I would. I guess that's called a clubhouse sandwich. Actually, that'll do. Clubhouse sandwich, bread lasagna, carbs. Until next time, get your game on, even if you got to play with yourself. And remember, forget the elf on the shelf. Get a game on the brain. Peace out, mofos.
Locked in the bunker, shadows shake. One man clapping secrets awake. Board games living, dice they break. Echoes pounding, hearts they quake.
In your bunker, board games rolling. One man clapping, stories growing. Hard rock thunder, speakers blowing. Clapping loud, the unknown sound.
Okay, Santa, if I can't have Betrayal of the Second Era, just bring all the carbs. Ron Swanson amounts of carbs. All the carbs. All the carbs.